Welcome to Scroll Sessions, the podcast where we delve in today to the minds of the most influential digital marketers and innovators in the agency space. So in this episode today, we're thrilled to have McCain Kennedy, the founder and COO at SetFire Creative. McCain has an impressive background in digital marketing, encompassing everything from graphic design to conversion rate optimization and more. With his extensive experience in leading teams and crafting effective marketing funnels, McCain helps businesses amplify their revenue through strategic digital marketing efforts. And today we're just going to explore his journey, get some insights and innovative strategies that drive SetFire Creative success. So thanks, McCain, for joining me today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dan.
Yeah, you're welcome. Tell me a little bit about how you got into digital marketing. Like, why go into the agency space? Why choose digital marketing?
Yeah, it's been a fun journey. So it actually all started back in high school. I took a art class my freshman year, and my teacher at the end of the year was like, hey, you should take graphic design next year. I didn't even know what graphic design was. But my sophomore year, I took her graphic design class, loved it. Ended up taking the graphic design 2 class the following year, my junior year. And I was like, man, this is really awesome.
Yeah.
And so I always say that like my first kind of experience in marketing was one day I had created an ad for some sort of school event, and I was walking past the library and I saw my ad up in the window and I was like, whoa,
This is cool.
I like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
And side note, I actually just emailed this high school teacher of mine the other day. I was like, hey, I don't know if you remember me.
Yeah.
I took graphic design. I was like, you kind of got me started in my career
That's awesome.
towards marketing. And she wrote me back and she's like, I remember you. In fact, here's some of your artwork. And she sent me some of my artwork from like sophomore and junior year in high school. I'll tell you, it was horrible, but it was so cool to see, because once I left that, I was like, I think I want to do graphic design, maybe something in advertising. And then once I was in school and I was studying graphic design, I just started leaning more into the marketing space. And then I just, I always kind of joke that when I was in college, advertising was still like, here's how to write a radio ad, and here's how to do a TV commercial and all that stuff. And then my first job out of college was doing SEO. And I was like, why did I not learn this in college?
Yeah, totally.
But I loved SEO. Then once I got introduced to like social media marketing and online advertising and stuff, just really was so interested in it, and I've just stuck with it ever since. And so it's nice because graphic design got me into the space, and it's something I still get to use on a daily or weekly basis for. And obviously, graphic design goes into a lot of different aspects of marketing, right? So that was the first kind of introduction into it, and that's what led me to where I am today.
That's cool. I love that. I think graphic design is an amazing skill to learn, to also train your eye of like what looks good, you know, what's enticing. And a lot of marketers sometimes don't have that, and they're maybe more analytical or technical, where they don't maybe take into effect what it actually looks like and make sure it's presentable, right? Like that's a huge piece, an important piece of content in general.
Yeah. Oh, and you see it so much, especially in like online advertising on social media channels.
Yeah.
Know some people that are just so technical and data driven, and it's awesome. And then it gets to the design side of things, or maybe even the copy side of things, and it's like, they need some help there, right? And so you can manage to balance the data side and the analytical side and the creative side. You're just a powerhouse in marketing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it makes you an absolute weapon, like no doubt about it. Talk to me about the founding of SetFire Creative and kind of how that came about. This is post college, I assume?
Yeah. Post college. Funny enough, it came about pretty organically, which isn't always what people like to hear.
Yeah.
Because I know everyone has different starts, and I get people who will reach out to me and say, hey, I'm trying to start a digital marketing agency. What recommendations do you have? This is what I'm doing. And I always tell them, I just got really lucky where after college, I just had people who knew that I was in marketing. They would reach out and they'd say, hey, I know you're in marketing. Can you do some stuff for me on the side? And I would say, sure. And so I would take things on. And once I had a few clients, that I was working with on the side, that's when I created the LLC, SetFire Creative, and I still remember the day. I was me and my wife had just moved out to Utah.
I think every entrepreneur does. They remember the day they filed.
And it always happens to be we were all living in like basement apartments or in our garage or something like that at that point, right?
Totally.
And I never thought much would come from it. I was like, oh, if this is something I can just do on the side, and whatever company I'm currently working at doesn't mind it and they're okay with me doing this, like, cool. I'll like always have a few clients on the side. But it just kind of grew, and it grew to a point where I brought on a couple of partners, and then it got to the point where we got a few other partner companies that we were working with. And then it got to a point where I had to leave the job I was currently at because we had started hiring employees. So we had 2 or 3 full-time employees before me or any of my partners went full-time with it. And I think the
amazing.
whole time I was like, yeah, I don't know if this is actually going to turn into anything. I don't know if this is going to turn into anything.
Because you're sticking at your day job more or less.
Yeah. But then, yeah, here we are.
I love that. I think that's an awesome story. And I think like it mirrors very similar to how, Shane and I started Scroll. I think a lot of people believe that entrepreneurs are like very like they're just risk takers in general, right? Yeah. But I would say, if anything, we're very calculated at the risk that we do take.
Yeah.
Right? Like you tried to like stabilize your life while you were doing this on the side for the most part. That seems to be the case with a lot of people that I talk to, right?
Yeah.
You really try to actually have some sort of stable income or something else that is stable in your life outside of doing the entrepreneurship thing.
Yeah.
And I think I think there's two different ways to think about it. One, there's like the burn the ships mentality where it's like you cannot have a second plan, more or less, right? You go all in. Or there's the, hey, I'm gonna like maybe be a little more smart about this and like actually try to build something while I've got this really stable piece that's working. So
and it's funny because I still remember getting into not an argument, but a discussion with a buddy of mine in college who he said entrepreneurship needed to be jump out of the plane without a parachute and figure out, how to build a parachute on your way down.
Yeah,
he's like, that's entrepreneurship. And I was like, no, you got to play it safe. Have something that's, pays the bills and then do this on the side. Be willing to work the extra hours. That guy now lives in the Dominican Republic, has lived there for almost 10 years. He's developing these communities out there.
Yeah.
Super awesome. Successful. Yeah. And he did it. He burned the ships and like just moved to the DR and has done it, and it's worked out phenomenal for him. So I'm like, either way works, but I guess you got to just find what works best for you.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, you really do. And I think you need to figure out, first of all, I think who you are and then who you're going to serve, right?
Yeah.
And then once those two things are in place, then you can figure out what you're going to do from there.
Yeah.
I love that.
I will say it's easier to go the jump out of the airplane route when you don't have like a wife and kids and stuff like that, depending on you, right?
Oh yeah, big time. I was just talking to a neighbor of mine who was more or less corporate lawyer for years, for his entire career, like 15, 20 years, out of law school and everything, joined in with a bigger firm and then moved to another bigger firm. And then like 2-3 years ago decided to take a partner and go out on his own. And he's got 4 or 5 kids. Like he's like, it was the biggest risk I've ever taken in my entire life, but it's majorly paid off for him now. And now they've got a growing firm. And so it's interesting talking with him just about taking the risk at his age with all that he had pretty much at stake at the time. Right.
And I think it's a testament too that you can be an entrepreneur at any point of your life.
Yeah.
There's always this thing too where I feel like a lot of people think that you have to do it when you're young and you can take a lot more risks, right? Which I think there's some credit to that. But sometimes when people ask me about entrepreneurship or, hey, I want to start this company, what are your recommendations and whatnot? Sometimes the recommendation I want to give them is like, go get a job, like go work in the space.
Yep.
I couldn't have SetFire Creative if I didn't work at a couple of other marketing agencies first.
Yeah.
Learn the processes, view the owners and the CEOs as mentors and ask them a lot of questions and understand how they ran their business and how they started their business. I can't imagine leaving college and being like, okay, I'm going to start my agency now.
Yes.
I would have no clue what I was doing. So sometimes it is a matter of being patient, give it some time, go learn from others. There's nothing wrong with working a 9 to 5.
No, not at all. And it's an essential part of the economy. And for most people, they actually thrive off the 9 to 5, right?
Totally.
So.
Yeah. And it's not, entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. Ownership, owning a business isn't for everyone. Yeah. I'm sure you and Shane feel it all the time. The days where you're like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Why did I sign up for this? This is terrible. But I mean, but then you also have the highs. The highs are very high, but the lows are very low. Yeah. Right. Oh yeah. And when you work for someone else, it's really nice because it's just stable. All the time.
Right? Yeah, you switch the 9 to 5 for a 24/7. That's just kind of how it goes. But it's the control and the freedom and all of the other things that come with it. And you're also trading one boss in the agency world for like 100 bosses. All your clients. But I think it's an interesting thing to bring up to you. I think starting a business at any time, as long as it's a good idea, like if the market's going to respond, and you're going to go for it and it's going to work out. It's crazy. Like I think the Walmart founder, I think it's Sam Walton.
Yeah, Sam Walton
started it. In his, I think, if I remember correctly, it was in his like 50s. Started very late in life. I mean, relative compared to like most other massive businesses. And it's interesting to see, like, obviously the evolution of Walmart becoming probably the biggest retailer in the world. And same with RC Willey. Same like here in Utah, it was started much later in the founder's life. And so it's just kind of interesting to see everybody has their time when it's going to work out well, right? And hopefully it's executed well, and hopefully it works out. But I think the idea is that you just start. Like if you feel like you have a good idea, test the market, see if the market's going to respond to it, see if you can get some clients or some customers, and then take it from there. You know, try to replace your 9-to-5 income.
And that's that's the biggest thing. It's like that was, and I'm sure it was the same for you guys. It was kind of like the decision to finally go full time with SetFire Creative was like, okay, is there not going to be that much of a stress on my family leaving my safe 9-to-5 job to go full time on this? Right. And once we got to that point, I was like, okay, it's kind of a no brainer, but that took a lot of time. It took a lot of patience. And like, I never knew if it was ever going to get to that point.
How did you decide to hire full-time employees? When did you kind of make that jump to say, hey, this is working out, like we need to make this legit, right?
Yeah. So I had 2 partners at one point. Now it's just me and one other partner. One of my partners, and this is kind of side note, what I would recommend to anyone who's like trying to start an agency, like find partners that are good at things that you're not good at.
Yeah, totally.
I really like the marketing side of things. I never considered myself good at sales. So one of my partners was an excellent sales, specifically for like digital marketing. Yeah. Our other partner was really good at all things administrative, finance, insurance, all of those things that I had no clue what to do, right? And what we noticed was my partner who was over the sales, he was just getting overwhelmed because he was still working his 9-to-5, and then he was doing all this stuff on the side, and he's like, I can't keep doing this. He's like, I want to have a good response time to these guys. So that was our first hire, was a sales rep. So we brought someone in. We were working with a couple of freelancers because I was doing all fulfillment, all account management, but once again on the side. So it was like getting home from my job, then running ads and doing all this stuff in the evenings, on the weekends. And it got to a point where we're like, I can't do this all myself. So we hired a couple of freelancers. I love freelancers. But I learned very quickly that freelancers, if something goes wrong, they can kind of just brush it off because they're like, well, it's not on me. Yeah. It's on this business, right?
Totally.
And so we wanted people who were going to take accountability for things. And so that's when we decided, okay, we got to ditch the freelancers. So the next person we hired was a full-time just advertiser, someone who could run online ads. And then the next person we hired was a full-time account executive who could handle all client relationships and everything like that. Yeah. So we had those 3 people hired before I even went full time.
That's amazing.
So we were running pretty smoothly with the 3 of them. And then, it got to the point where I just had to jump out. Yeah.
No, I love that. I think that's an important distinction on when to hire. I know like Shane and I have always had the mentality of like, hey, we're going to max everything out as much as we possibly can before we jump and invest in additional resources. Yeah. Right. And we've kind of always had that mentality, even when, we ran it with the 4 of us for a very, very long time. Like it was a couple of years before we actually grew a team. We tried to handle as much as we possibly could till the recurring revenue just got to a point where it's like, nah, it doesn't make any more sense for us to be fulfilling anymore. Yeah. We need to hire an account manager, same process. And I think a lot of agencies go through that of like, hey, do we white label? Do we hire freelancers? Are we going to build an in-house team? And I think in every situation, and especially because we've talked with literally hundreds and hundreds of agencies, if not thousands, over the last like couple of years, because we do a lot of white label work. Yeah. And it's interesting to see what works for one agency doesn't work for another agency. And it's all unique.
I talked to a team recently that they mentioned most of their fulfillment is overseas. Yeah. And that's how they've had it over the last 10 years. Yeah. And they've just got processes down pat where they have project managers who are overseeing everything that's happening. And the fulfillment team is there only to execute on the strategy. Yeah. And it was such a unique process. And for them, it was a cost saver. Yep. To go that route. I know we get a lot of questions. People will be like, is your team in-house or do you use freelancers or do you hire overseas and stuff? And I've always noticed people tend to like when you can say, no, we're all in-house. We're all here locally and things like that. But yeah, you're exactly right. Things just work for different people. I've heard so many different structures, company structures and team structures. Yeah, we've had this interesting thing where at one point, actually, my partner who was over sales, he just wanted to kind of build the team out as quickly as possible. Yeah. Because from a sales perspective, he said, it's always nicer when we can say we're a 15-person team, we're a 20-person team. The bigger the team, the better, right? And my other partner and I, we would kind of disagree with him a little bit and be like, no, like why? It doesn't make sense. But we would bring on, we'd get like part-time people that would come in and help out with sales or different things like that. And he's the one that's not a part of the team anymore. And we love him. We still keep contact and everything like that. He just got busy with other things, and so we parted ways just maybe a couple years back. But ever since then, we kind of went back into the mentality of like, no, we don't need to be the biggest team. We don't need to grow super fast. And what we've noticed is when people ask, how big is your team? They like hearing how big our team is. They're like, oh, you guys are kind of a small, you're more like boutique. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Because now I know you're going to give us the attention that we deserve.
For sure.
So I've actually seen that there's a lot of power in kind of being a smaller team. And I've always put it, it's kind of like the saying, I'd rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies.
Yes.
So like if we're going to be a smaller team, let's be the best team possible and be made of just the strongest team members who are all so good at what they do that we, one person can do the job of 3 people, right? And so that's how we've gone about it over the last couple of years with our team.
I love that. And I think talent is super important, especially in agency life where there's not a lot that differentiates one agency from another in terms of like services. Like nowadays, like I think most agencies are willing to just do what the client's like, hey, we need this. Okay, great. Right. So like in terms of services, it's kind of hard to differentiate unless you have something that's really unique. So that where you differentiate yourself is obviously in the results you bring, the people that you have, the efficiency or how fast you deliver. Yeah. What have you kind of done with SetFire to help you guys stand out a little bit, especially in those sales conversations?
Yeah. So what I always say makes SetFire Creative a little more unique is that we specifically work with small to mid-sized businesses. That's our bread and butter. And we've just found that a lot of agencies really like the larger companies, the enterprise level companies. They want to be just a small part of that company's marketing team. Whereas for us, we get a lot of companies that come to us and they're startups and they're like, okay, this needs to work, right? And they come to us. And it's a little stressful, let's be honest, because there's a lot depending on you. But we do a good job of vetting out clients that we work with to make sure that we trust the brand, we trust the product, we think we can sell it. We tend to work with businesses that have proven concept to a certain point, whether they've done enough market research beforehand, or maybe they are already selling products and maybe they're even running ads and seeing some results. We like to take that and just take them to the next level. But that tends to help us stand out a little bit. But also one thing that we've really focused on over the last couple of years has been communication, because it is the biggest thing, biggest complaint we've heard from people who come to us. And perfect example, we have a client, they've been with us for the last 2 or 3 months. When they first reached out to us, they said, hey, we're working with another marketing agency. They're running our Google ads. What do you think you guys can do? And so we talked a little bit about it, asked them how their Google ads are going. Yeah, they're going good. They're going good. We're like, well, can we audit your account for you? And they're like, yeah, sure. So they got us access. I had someone on my team audit their Google account. My team member comes back to me and goes, they're seeing a 10x. They're like crushing it. They should just stay with their agency.
I love that.
So that's what we went back to them when we said, hey, these guys are getting you a 10x return on your ad spend. Stay with them. They've done an awesome job. There's a few things we would test here and there, but for the most part, they're doing great. These guys get back to us and they say, wow, that's great to hear. Because you know what? Our biggest pain point with them is actually the communication. And you guys just got back to us so fast. We can tell you're going to be better communicators. Yeah. We're going to go with you guys. And I just thought, how did we just get that deal? But that was a big focus. It's been a big focus of ours over the last couple of years of just being extremely responsive to clients, turnaround times, making sure they're super quick. I tell every single client, I say, if there's ever a complaint I want to hear from you, it's that you're hearing from my team too much and that we need to back off. And that means my team, if they don't hear from the client, the team will reach out and send them a check-in, let them know how things are going. We're constantly touching base rather than waiting till the monthly report comes around and that's when they hear from us. And so, huge focus on communication has really, I feel like, helped us stand out from other agencies.
I love that. And the honesty is huge too. Like just the fact that you guys were willing to do that, hop into an account, audit it, and then tell them, hey, it's actually going good. Yeah. I think is a huge sign of trust and a huge sign of you being like a trusted advisor to that client, right? And I think at the end of the day, like I think that's all like agency owners need to do is act and be like your client's trusted advisor, because at the end of the day, that's what they've hired you to do. They've hired you to advise, they've hired you to direct their marketing and drive growth. And so you need to have that honesty. You need to be willing to kind of push back a little bit when they bring stuff up if you feel like it needs to go in a different direction,
Yeah. And you and I were talking about this before we started this recording, but there's definitely an abundance mindset out here where we're located in Utah. A lot of the agencies like to help each other out. And for us, whenever someone comes to us and says, well, I'm working with an agency and this is going wrong, we always like to take the perspective of the agency and be like, okay, is that...
how would we handle this?
Yeah. And I think we should all just be helping each other out. And so anytime we can, because we had another client maybe a couple years back, that very similar thing. They're like, I'm running Facebook ads on my own. An agency's running our Google ads. I'm getting really frustrated with the Google ads because I think they could be doing better. They're like, with Facebook ads, I don't know what we're doing. We really want you guys to help out.
Yeah.
Can you audit both accounts? So we audited both accounts. What we came back, my team came back, and I'm giving them the credit for this because I wasn't involved in this.
Yeah.
I just heard the story. The team came back and said, your team is doing awesome on Google ads. We definitely think we can help you out with Facebook ads, though. Here's some things that we would do differently on Facebook ads. She called my team, the client did, and said, I just got off the phone with my other agency, and I was crying because I told them I was about to cancel with you guys because I didn't think you were doing well, but another agency just confirmed you're doing super well, and I'm sticking with you guys, and don't worry, I'll be with you forever. And to us, that makes us feel great because I believe in karma.
Yeah, totally.
Put it out in the world, do something good for
100%.
someone else. And I would love to hear if another agency did that for us, right?
Yeah, totally.
And so like we try to be as honest and like you put it, like an honest advisor, and just we want them to trust us. And that's super important to any relationship with a client. And so sometimes that means telling them things that isn't going to benefit you.
Yeah. Definitely.
Right? Like, oh, I could get this deal, but I wouldn't do anything different than their current agency. It's like, just have to choose to do the right thing, right?
Yeah, no, totally. We had a meeting like a couple weeks ago with the entire team, and we were talking about trust. And every touch point you have, whether it be a phone call, whether it be the monthly report, whether it be a text, Slack, email, you name it, every single interaction from the time that they first see maybe your ad or they get a cold call from you to the time that they leave you is a time to build trust.
Yeah.
It's either lose trust time or it's a build trust time.
Yeah.
Right. And so choose wisely how you communicate and what you communicate and how you say things, because it's a make or break with trust every single time. Right.
Yeah.
And that's, as agencies, we kind of put ourselves in that position because clients paying us, right? They're paying us for advice. And so any misstep in that relationship is going to be on the agency, not necessarily on the client. The client probably will never see it that way, even if the client's in the wrong, which, it can happen.
Yeah.
And so I think the best thing to do is always lead with, trust and honesty and everything. Because, it's crazy, man. We have a lot of experiences with other agencies holding stuff hostage or not giving stuff away. It just is so common in our industry. And so it sucks dealing with agencies that kind of just want to play the game, more or less.
If I had a dollar for every time I had someone come to us and say, I've run ads with the same agency the last few years, I want to run ads with you guys, but they own the ad account.
It's in their ad account. Yeah. And it's like, come on.
I could retire at 33. It happens so often. And we're like,
it's hard.
So you
it's
hate
difficult.
to see that stuff.
It's rife. So I think setting yourself apart, being that honest advisor, being trusted, being trustworthy in general, hopefully turns the stigma around with agencies in general. Like one of our main taglines is all people, no agency.
Yeah, I love it.
And it's like very much focused on, hey, forget about what you know about working with a marketing agency because it's going to be different with us. You know?
I think one of the hardest things too, I just had this conversation with someone the other day. Marketing gets a bad rep for a lot of reasons, right? Or kind of similar to sales, right?
Yeah.
Like you're trying to sell people on something. But one of the things that's hard for marketing agencies is you really can't guarantee results. It's not like if someone goes to a web designer and says, hey, I'm going to pay you this money, you're going to give me a 5-page website.
Yes.
And they know there's an end product. Are they going to love the end product? No, maybe not. But, they can have some edits and back and forth, right? But with marketing, sometimes you don't know. I always say no one has a crystal ball. So you really can't guarantee those results. And we get people who will come to us and say, well, I'm talking to a couple different agencies.
They guarantee like a 5x return, all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
By the end of month 1, we're going to get this and this. And we like to under-promise and over-deliver. That's our motto.
Yeah.
So we'll downplay things and just try to make sure, like,
even the expectations are there.
Yeah, because expectations are so important. If you can set proper expectations, it's exactly like you said.
Yeah.
From the get-go, just setting the proper expectations just helps build that trust. And I've noticed that people tend to like that because if they have 2 different agencies, one agency is saying, I can promise you a 5X by the end of the first month. The other one's like, we're going to try our hardest. We've got some really great ideas in mind. Here's our kind of strategy. Unfortunately, we can't promise you any results. I feel like they tend to go with the ones that it's like, hey, I can't promise you anything, but we're going to give it a go and we're going to try our hardest just because it's hard to promise those results. And
especially nowadays.
Yeah. Oh,
It may have been easier like 5-6 years ago, pre iOS 14,
right? Yeah.
But post iOS 14 and with tracking and attribution and everything just being all pretty much just haywire, it's a lot harder to guarantee anything anymore.
Yeah.
But tell me about how you guys are working AI and automation into the agency, if you are. I know, like, for us, it's been a driver to deliver stuff faster. It's been a driver to help us understand inputs a lot faster and easier, and then also deliver outputs much faster, 10 times faster, help take our content writers and make them almost like they're 10 writers, right?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Tell me about how you guys are using automation in the business.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's funny because I don't know if you experienced the same thing. When ChatGPT started becoming really big, we actually had a handful of clients reach out to us and say, please sign this contract that you will not use any AI.
Interesting. We didn't have anybody reach out to us. We've had people bring it up and be like, do you use it? And we just flat out, yes. It's like, yeah, it's part of everything that we do, actually. So if that's not okay with you, we're probably not a good fit.
Yeah.
You know? But
so our team uses it primarily for like ideation.
Yeah.
So kind of to get the wheels turning a little bit. So coming up with ad copy, or maybe if we're writing a blog post, maybe helping with the structuring on the blog post.
Yeah.
With ads, specifically ideation. We've had trainings on AI, and we've done little internal competitions to see who could use AI to make the best blog post, to make it sound the most human and everything like that. And we still don't feel like it's there where you can just plug it in and this is perfect. So we have specific processes if we do use AI, but like I said, ad copy, it's more than anything, just ideation, just helping get those wheels turning. Blog posts, still it's mainly our team just writing the content, but they'll use AI to help with ideas, structure, different things like that. But yeah, that's mainly what we're using it.
That's
cool. How we're using it.
That's super cool. I think everybody should look into the ramifications of using it, good or bad, right? Like nowadays, give it another probably year or two and it's going to be ubiquitous. Like it's going to be in everything. It already kind of is, but like I feel like it's going to become way more mainstream with how fast things are moving. Like I mean, 4.0 just released for ChatGPT, and it's mind-blowing what it can do. It's been super cool that at Scroll have kind of taken it and created custom GPTs for clients. So we have some larger clients that, hey, we're going to take all the information we can possibly find on the client that they've given us, their brand guides, their ICP, like everything we can possibly find, all their website content, you name it, right?
Yeah.
And we'll upload it to a custom GPT and have that GPT as almost a client advisor without having to talk to the client directly. And it becomes a way for us to understand the voice much quicker.
Cool.
For us, to do that. And that's something that we've done internally that's been super helpful for our ad buyers, for our internal SEO teams, and creating those custom GPTs specifically. The nice thing with those is you can turn off the model so it doesn't share it with the main learning model. So it's just internal, right? Which is super cool, protects their data and everything, and use the enterprise API to be able to do that. And it's been a game changer for like not having to reach out as much to the client to ask like little questions,
right?
Where now we can deliver something and they're going to be much more happy with it because it's going to match kind of what we have and what they've given us much faster than us having to go back, do a ton of iterations, right? So that's been super helpful.
That's cool. I'll actually have to pick your guys' brain on that a little bit more if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome. And then I know we've kind of taken our onboarding process and streamlined that too. So all of the onboarding inputs that come in from like a form, we'll take that, throw it into ChatGPT and spit out ICP, spit out ad copy, spit out all this kind of stuff that gives that kind of boost. I mean, within seconds from that onboarding form being filled out, our team's got that ready to go so that they can really speak to what's happened within that first week, and it just is sped things up a lot faster. So it's been cool.
Yeah, and that's awesome to hear too, because it's like it's not replacing everything, right?
No.
And I think that's the biggest thing, and that's what a lot of people worried about was
it's gonna take over our jobs. It's
taking over our jobs. And then from a client's perspective, are you guys not doing any work now? You're just plugging everything in and then just whatever it spits out, sending it over. And what I think most people have found is using it as a tool, right? And someone even on our team just Monday morning gave a message, and they said, they're like, AI should be used as the same way we use a calculator, right? Doesn't take over everything, right? But it's just like when we need quick little things, it's a little more efficient, like, hey, go use it and whatnot. So
it should make somebody who's like mediocre be proficient. It
Uh-huh.
should make somebody who's proficient be faster.
Yeah.
Should make somebody who's like excellent 10x their output.
Yeah.
Right? That's how AI should be used. The same with the calculator. I mean, everybody said the same thing about a calculator, about the internet, about any really advancement in technology. We're going to lose jobs. And yeah, like it probably will affect some people's jobs for sure. But the only job it's going to take is the person who doesn't understand and learn how to use it more effectively.
Totally.
Right? And so like that's at the end of the day, making it a part of, I think, daily training, making it a part of your work, helping you work faster, better, smarter is always a good idea.
Yeah, definitely.
Tell me about kind of the role of technology and advertising in general. Like I know post iOS 14, it's been super interesting for ad agencies to figure out attribution and kind of like how do you guys navigate big changes or stay on top of trends, especially in tech, so that you can serve your clients better?
Yeah. Marketing, man, that's the one thing I wish people would have told me when I got into marketing is, hey, just expect every month something new is going to come out and you have to stay on top of things.
Yeah.
It really is a matter of just staying on top of whatever is coming out and whatever the changes are and how are you going to adjust. I always like to say, I mean, it sounds a little harsh, but like evolve or die. Right.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of how marketing is, right? You have to be able to roll with things and the updates. You know, Google always likes to throw out new surprises. You mentioned the iOS 14 update.
Within the last 18 months, we've had like 6 major Google algorithm updates for SEO purposes. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah. The iOS 14 update, I mean, you remember that clearly as I do. That was like Chicken Little, the sky is falling, right? Everyone was like, how are we, you know, ads are done. Meta ads are done. So it's interesting. So it's just a matter of keeping on top of things. Thankfully, there's some really smart people out there that read their blogs or watch their YouTube videos and can stay informed. And LinkedIn's always been a really good resource as well for staying on top of new things and being a part of those discussions. But yeah, I mean, I feel like with marketing, you just always have to be aware that things are going to change. And I think what's important too is there was a company, I don't know if you've heard of this, there was a company a while back that big SEO company wasn't doing everything exactly white hat.
Yeah.
And then Google released an update and it just wrecked their entire business.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's like, okay, make sure everything's white hat, make sure we're doing everything as ethically as possible. And we're kind of obeying the rules, listening to, you know, Google and Meta, and this is how they want you to do things just in case anything does come out that could just wreck everything.
Yeah, totally. And then you have the helpful content update and within the last year that even wrecked people that were doing everything above board.
True.
You know? So it's like, it is so crazy, especially in SEO, because I feel like the lines get blurred a lot between like maybe what's right per se and what's wrong and whose strategy is the best, what links should we build. Like it's way more nuanced than I feel like Facebook ads, right?
Yeah.
SEO as a service it's tough, man. It's tough.
Yeah. Even, I mean, people, you know, thankfully I have a team
yeah.
that is like stays on top of this stuff, sometimes better than I can like keep my thumb on things.
Yeah.
And I'll get brought into the conversation and I'm like, wait, what now? What happened?
Give me an update.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I better go do some research.
I need to read a memo, it sounds like.
yeah. And one thing we haven't implemented at SetFire Creative, and it's been on the top of my mind for a while, one agency I used to work for did, and I loved it, was they had a dedicated expert for every part of marketing. So there was like a graphic design expert, there was a Google Ads expert, an SEO expert, local SEO expert. And what that person's role was to stay on top of everything for just that one specific area and then do a training once a month on all the updates from that area. And so it made it really just efficient. Like people didn't have to, everyone in the company didn't have to stress about, okay, I really have to stay on top of everything. It's like, okay, we're having the local SEO training. Let's see what big updates are happening. And so that's one thing we've wanted to implement at SetFire Creative, to just stay on top of things, give everyone a specific thing. Okay, you're responsible for this. Train us once a month on this. And so that's something that we'll be implementing hopefully here soon.
I love that. We have an all hands meeting every week on Tuesdays, and I implemented a training period during that all hands every single week. It's like 15 minutes. Everybody gets assigned and they have a big list of topics to choose from. But that, I think, an even smarter idea. It's like being on top of trends, because still like everybody kind of runs their own ship at Scroll for the most part. And so they're really responsible for their ship, and they're responsible for the strategy and more or less the direction if new emerging things are coming out, right? So I think that's a huge piece, just making sure that that's on top of mind, that you're staying ahead of the game, that you're figuring out attribution.
Yeah.
Even, prior, we've got cookies that are going away like fully on Google, most likely. I mean, we'll see. Google said that like 2 years ago and it still hasn't happened yet. Because I think they're struggling trying to figure out, how do we save our $189 billion business, basically.
Yeah. And you feel a little bad for some of these big tech companies where they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Especially with the privacy stuff, yeah.
Yes. Everything Meta's gone through over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, you feel bad for Mark Zuckerberg sometimes when you see him standing in front of Congress having to test about it. But you're just like, he's trying to do right in terms of privacy. He's trying to do right by his advertisers and his whole business run. So yeah, they're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, right? And they're like, well, how do we make everyone happy? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think it's interesting. And I mean, love to hate or love to love Mark Zuckerberg.
Have you seen the recent picture of him with like his beard?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
People are like, a beard goes a long way.
We were just kind of joking about the Sweet Baby Ray's thing yesterday at Team Lunch. I don't know if you remember when that. So Mark Zuckerberg, when they announced Facebook Live, he was testing it out, obviously. He was doing some big public tests that were live to anyone who wanted to see it. And he was at his home and he was doing a barbecue in the backyard.
Okay, yeah.
And he just loved Sweet Baby Ray's, barbecue sauce, which is I feel pretty polarizing to people that actually enjoy barbecue.
Right.
And he just kept leaning over and he kept saying it over and over again, Sweet Baby Ray's, Sweet Baby Ray's. And so it's become kind of ubiquitous. And so you see sometimes when he'll do presentations, there's a Sweet Baby Ray's bottle in the background, on his, I don't know, display, in the background and stuff, because it's kind of become ubiquitous. You have to look it up if you haven't seen it. It's so funny.
Oh, that's
It's
great.
honestly hilarious. But what are some of the biggest challenges you've dealt with as an agency owner, trying to juggle all the things that agency owners juggle?
The balance between retention and new sales, keeping everyone happy. In a perfect world, we would just have our client list, retain them all 100% month over month.
Yeah,
and
ideally.
Great, we're fine.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of interesting, we're not, and maybe you and Shane have gone through the same thing, we're not looking to be a 150-person agency anytime soon. When we think about our 5-year plan or 3-year plan or a year plan, I went out to a lunch with another agency owner, been around for a long time, much longer than we've been around. And his team, I think he's 20, 25 people. And I had asked him out at lunch, and I view this guy as a mentor. And I said, hey, I'm kind of surprised. Do you mind if I ask? And I hope this isn't offensive. I'm just kind of curious. You guys are 25 people right now? I was I'm surprised you're not bigger. And he's I don't want to be bigger. I like where I'm at. He's my goal with my company is I want to know everyone's name, their spouse's name, their kid's name. I want to know what they like to do for fun. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. Having worked at places that were much larger, 100-person companies, 50-person companies that the owners knew everyone on the team. It's hard to, right?
It's hard to, especially at that scale, yeah.
So my partner and I have liked that idea of the more intimate boutique style. Let's keep it kind of low. So we would love to just, have our client list and just stick to it and just be we're happy. Yeah. But that's not how it goes, right? So you got the retention. So it feels like...
You kind of fight with each other a little bit sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. And then you're trying to balance retention and sales, and you're trying to balance, you can have a really good sales month, but maybe retention was a little lack. Okay, well, let's go focus on retention. You focus on retention. Okay, well, now we didn't focus on sales as much.
Yeah.
So you're trying to I just keep picturing a balloon full of water that there's a hole somewhere. And so you go and cover that hole, but now another hole pops up and now you're trying to cover these, and you just
I love that analogy.
It keeps just coming out. And so that's been the biggest challenge. And then for me personally, just as an owner, I still wear so many hats.
Yeah.
And I'd like to not.
Or less hats. Yeah.
But but that's just how it goes, right?
Yeah,
so
totally.
That's a balance too. And then just knowing what to hand off to other people, what you can get rid of. There's this great exercise that I read about a few years back, and I try to do it once a quarter. And I feel like I get so bogged down times that sometimes I don't get around to doing it. But pretty much listing out, what do I do on a daily basis, a weekly basis, and a monthly basis? Which tasks do I like? Which am I good at, and which one benefits the company? And I go through and I check boxes next to each task. Do I like doing it? Am I good at it? Does it benefit the company? If I don't put a check next to that task at all, I know I can get rid of it.
Yeah.
If I like it, but I'm not good at it and doesn't benefit the company, I can get rid of it. if it benefits the company, but I'm not good at it and I don't like it, I know I can give it to another person on the team, right? So I try to do that pretty often,
love
but
that.
there's other things just always pop up, right? And you
Yeah.
get more and more tasks put on your plate, and you're like, okay, well, I'll take this for a while and see how I feel about it. Maybe in a few months down the road, I'll see if I don't like it, if I'm not good at it, if it doesn't benefit the company.
I feel like you and I are very similar in the same boat, where I feel like COOs are kind of jack of all trades kind of people for the most part. And so you end up liking a lot of different stuff. You feel like you're good at a lot of different stuff. And so you get sucked into a lot of different stuff, right? Yeah. And I think that's a great analogy of like plugging holes with the balloon. Yeah. I think that's just almost illustrates exactly what agency ownership is like, right? Yeah. And so it's figuring out how to minimize the hole and then plug people in where it makes sense to plug people in. I love your exercise you do. It reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever read, and I'm just blanking on the book. It's a COO book. I'm trying to remember what it's called. I don't know if there's the CEO from Within, which is done by the IBM founder, but there's another one that's about COOs and kind of how to, one, pick a good COO, and also like how to understand when it's time to maybe hire a partner or hire a COO. I can't remember the name of the book for the life of me right now. Anyways, but that book kind of goes through like as an executive or as a founder, as an owner, you need to do that audit pretty often, right? Like you really need to dive into, if you want to actually have impact at a company or the growth of the company, you really need to focus pretty much 95% of your time on things that are going to drive growth or drive change or drive things forward, instead of things that even you may like or you may be even good at, but someone else is even better than you, right? So it's about doing that audit on a regular basis to make sure that things are solid.
Yeah. And we talk a lot about managing time every day, but more importantly, managing energy, right? We all only have so much energy to give each day. And I know that like I can't do creative projects end of day, you know? Friday afternoon at 2:00, probably not the best time to do a creative project, right? So knowing when I should plan certain projects or tasks at different times of the day, and then also knowing what is just an energy sucker that I just need to get rid of and just either hand off to someone else on my team or just get rid of completely. But also as an owner of the business, there's those things that are like your baby. And it's really hard to give your baby away. You're like, man, I've been doing this since day one. I just kind of want to stick to doing this, but swallowing the pride and just saying no, someone else is a better fit for this.
You got to put the ego away. No, I totally get that. And I feel like there comes a point where, especially if you want to grow, you have to do that. Like it's like you can only grow so much using your own brain. You know, like you got to bring other brains in that also understand things in a different way than you, in a better way than you do. And putting that ego aside, I think it's sometimes hard to do for agency owners in particular.
Yeah, definitely.
Tell me a little bit about kind of what metrics you guys prioritize internally to measure those things. Is there anything that you like look at specifically on the retention or sales side to make sure you guys are in check?
Yeah, like so for us specifically, not for like client campaigns or anything like that. We measure, well, so we obviously have goals in terms of retention, sales. Those are kind of the two biggest things. Then we have like our yearly goals as well. So we track those every single month when we do our company meeting. We'll look at our year goals and see how we're doing for our year goals. And then as far as like, retention goes, one thing we've just focused on so much over the last few years, and I feel like it never ends, processes. Using client feedback to help improve our processes so that it can help improve retention is so key for us. And
do you feel like that's a big mistake like beginning agency owners make?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of terms, right? Like not listening to client feedback, I think is huge. It's really easy. And mind you, not all client feedback is going to be gold. So you kind of do have to take it with a grain of salt. But if you hear it from a few different people, you probably need to change your processes a little bit, right? For instance, we sometimes get people that when they get their first monthly report, they're like, well, I like it different. Like I like it formatted differently. And we're like, okay, well, we're not going to overhaul our whole reporting process.
This is how we report.
But if you hear things in terms of communication, like I mentioned earlier, us doing weekly check-ins with all of our clients, that was because we had noticed like clients were saying, hey, we didn't hear from you much during this month. And we were like, oh, we were just hard at work working on your ad accounts and doing this stuff. But then we were like, no, we have the time to check in on our clients and just let them know what's going on. So I think, a lot of new agency owners, maybe not taking that feedback to heart, being willing to change the processes, but not creating processes is huge. There's a great book, maybe you read E-Myth Revisited.
Yeah, the E-Myth is awesome. Such a great book.
Yeah. I mean, he talks specifically about if you don't have processes in place, you lose a key team member. Someone comes in new and you're like, okay, I guess you can just do your own thing.
Yeah, figure it out. Yeah.
And so for us, that's been huge because we have obviously over the last 5-6 years had turnover. We've had employees come in and go. And the thing that saves us every single time is having processes in place that when someone new comes in, we can show them all the documentation. We can take them through trainings and different things like that to show them how we're going to do it, or how we do it as a company. But obviously we want them to come with their expertise and their talent. And every single person we hire obviously comes in with a little bit of feedback and says, well, I like to do things this way. And we're willing to change and tweak our processes a little bit if it makes sense, or even to test out.
Totally.
Maybe some of their suggestions, but yeah, those processes are key.
Like vital and vital for not only the health of the business, but also the health of the accounts. Like everything, you've got to document them.
Yeah.
What are maybe some common mistakes you feel like agency owners make and how they can fix them?
Well, going back to communication, I think that's key.
Yeah.
So not only how often you're communicating, but how you're communicating. I love the saying that it's not so much what you say to people, it's how you say it goes a long way.
Yeah. Very much so.
I think at a certain...
Even in your tone of voice and how you look, how you say it, how you're looking when you're saying actually matters almost more than what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because humans respond to other humans in the way they present themselves.
Yeah, definitely. One of the best stories I've ever heard, and I share this with my team probably at least like twice a year. I heard this story when I was 20. Someone told me this. They said there was once a king who had a dream where all his teeth fell out one by one. So when he woke up, he was freaking out. What does this dream mean? So he had, his servants go and find someone who could interpret dreams. And some guy comes to him and listens to the dream and tells him, oh man, this is terrible. The teeth falling out, that represents your family. They're all going to die one by one. And the king said, this is terrible. And he told his servants, take this guy, throw him in prison. I did not like that dream and that interpretation. Go find me someone else. So they go find him a different dream interpreter. This guy comes in, listens to the dream, and he goes, oh man, this is wonderful. This means you're going to live really long. In fact, you're going to outlive all your family. And the king was like, okay, great. I like this. Servants, give him all the gold that he wants, They interpreted the dream the exact same way. The king's going to outlive all of his family. The family's going to die before him. But one guy phrased it positively while the other guy phrased it negatively. Like horribly, right? And so it just goes to show the way that you say things has so much impact on how someone's going to receive that. So speaking positively, making sure even email communication is dialed in. It's always professional. It's grammatical. We use Grammarly like no one's business.
Grammarly is awesome, man.
Yeah.
It'll save a lot of mistakes.
Yes. It's like trying to make sure everything is so dialed in professionalism, and how we communicate is just so important. Because even if you sent some emails to a client and you had a bunch of misspellings in it, they would catch on to that after a while and be like, who's running my advertising? Who is this, So communication often, and then just how we communicate, I think is so important. It's something that we've seen just go wrong with other clients.
It's huge to you need to recognize that especially the professional language and also jargon, you've got to remove, I think in agency life, we get stuck in the jargon of what we're talking about for the most part. You need to keep it super simple, super honest, and just be straight to the point, right? Yeah. No fluff. I feel like a lot of agencies get caught in the fluff or using metrics to confuse clients or what. And maybe it's not even on purpose, but you have to frame what you're talking about in a way that the client's going to understand and respond to it. Because things could, like the other client you had mentioned earlier, things could be going really well. They just may not know it. Yeah. So that could be an issue, or things could be going well, but the way you talk about it isn't very great. Mm-hmm. Or even things could be going really horribly and you talk about it really great, and maybe that's not the right thing to do. Yeah. So I think it's just about, you have to meet the client where they're at, talk to them literally like a fifth grader, and give them what they're looking for, and hopefully that what you've delivered, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because it made me think of a client that we have that they have a product. It's for the average day consumer. I'm trying to keep it kind of vague, but it can get very technical. There's this product they have built. I mean, they put a lot of time and effort into this thing, and the ad copy my team wrote for it was speaking to the everyday man. Yeah. And then they wanted to change it to be way more technical and be like, no, we need to use all the jargon and all the scientific, verbiage, because we think that's important. And so we had to ask them the question. We're like, well, who's your audience? Is it other doctors, or is it just the average person, the average consumer? Okay. And so it's important to I always think about write as if you're talking to an eighth grader, or an eighth grade would understand it. Eighth grader would understand it. So I think that's important.
Yeah. And the client education side, I think, is huge, especially for even first-time agency owners, or even agency owners that have been around a long time. being able to educate the client without seeming overbearing or without coming off wrong or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge piece that goes into how you communicate and talk with clients.
Yeah. And I mean, not every relationship's going to be perfect. And there might be some times where something happens and it's like just being empathetic and understanding where they're coming from, putting yourself in their shoes. I've seen, man, I worked at one agency right out of college that taught me everything what not to do.
Yeah.
And I would hear other people on calls with clients and just getting into full-blown fights. And I'm like, why are you talking to that person that way? Like, this person's paying us to do something.
Totally.
Someone on our team messed up. We have no grounding to
even
argue
push
with
back.
them.
Yeah.
And so I think just kind of humbling yourself and just being willing to apologize and take responsibility. I think responsibility and accountability goes a long way for any team. And people love to see that. It goes along with trust.
Yep.
Building that trust with clients, showing them that you're accountable. Even when you do make mistakes, owning the mistake, fixing it, and everything like that goes a long way with clients.
No, I love that. Maybe to wrap up, what do you feel like the kind of the future for SetFire Creative and what you guys are doing next?
Yeah, we have a few ideas, a few things that like are still kind of under wraps a little bit, but we've got a few ideas of things that maybe offerings that we want to provide. The thing for us is that right now, we have kind of our core 4 services. So SEO, Google Ads, social ads, and then social media management. We are really good at those 4 things. We've dipped our toes into like some other things like web design and whatnot in the past. And what we've realized is we just don't like doing certain stuff or maybe we're not the best at it. So we're like, let's focus at what we're really good at. But we feel like if we hire the right people, maybe there's some more ways to expand our services a little bit. So that's something that we're thinking of.
Awesome.
But right now, biggest focus for us is making sure that our employees are well taken care of, that they're not feeling overwhelmed. They feel like they have everything they need to do the best work. And then in turn, if we can focus on our employees and taking care of them, our clients are going to be well taken care of. And as long as our clients are happy, seeing good results, and everything's going well with the relationship there, those are the biggest things that are most important for us. Growth is nice. We'd like to grow a little bit more and grow the team just a little bit more. But like I said earlier, we're not looking to be a 100-person company, 150-person company, but we've got some room to grow. So we expect SetFire Creative to grow a little bit more over the next couple of years.
Cool. Awesome. Well, McCain, appreciate the time today, man. It was good chatting with you, and thanks for sharing your insights with SetFire Creative and also just your insights for other agency owners. Really, really appreciate it. How can people find you, SetFire Creative? Where's the best place to hit you up?
SetFireCreative.com. That's our website. Feel free to visit it. If you want to contact with me, LinkedIn is great. Just McCain Kennedy on LinkedIn is a great place to connect with me.
Awesome. Perfect. McCain, thanks so much. Appreciate it. And that's a wrap on Scroll Sessions today.
Thanks, Dan.